Welcome to Love Light, the only podcast dedicated to bright, fine art photography. Hosted by Sarah Jane Ethan, Love Light is here to celebrate all things bright, pretty and pastel. At Love Light, white is the new black and beauty is in the detail. This is your place to relax, a place to belong, a place to be inspired and connect with like-minded colleagues who share your passion for light and beauty. So come and introduce yourself in the Love Light Facebook group and subscribe to the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram for your weekly dose of inspiration and connect with bright, fine art photographers from around the world.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Love Light podcast. Today we've got Julie Paisley with us, which I'm very excited about. I have been personally inspired by Julie's work, so I'm thrilled that she's given us some of her time. Julie is a luxury destination and editorial photographer from Nashville, Tennessee, although she is currently traveling the country in an RV, which I love, with her husband of 27 years and her daughter, and she also has a son who's in college. Julie is the owner of the Hybrid Co conference, which has just grown and grown every year. And if you're in the fine art industry, you will probably have heard of the Hybrid Co conference, or if you haven't, you will hear and want to go very soon. Julie spends a lot of her time teaching photographers how to pivot into a luxury market, but also how to learn to coach themselves. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you've agreed to join us, Julie. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you are so welcome. I am so excited to be here. I'm just eating up your accent.
That is one of the benefits. Being a British podcaster, everyone loves my accent.
Oh, yes. And
I'm originally from the south of England, and I currently live in the north. And so to all the northerners up here, I sound like the Queen. I sound so posh.
I love it. Well, I'm from the South, so I have the obvious Southern accent.
Yes.
Sometimes we talk too fast and we say things that have people questioning. Like, even in the US, we use words. So when I do travel internationally, which I do, I get this a lot too. Like, they'll say, "Will you say that again?
Oh,
Will you talk? Can we hear that? What is y'all?"
Oh, that's so funny. Moving up to the north of England was the first time I had people asking me to repeat myself. And I was like, I speak the Queen's English. What do you mean, repeat myself?
It is so proper. I love it. You need to teach me.
Yeah, that's a new avenue. I think all of us photographers are looking at ways to diversify with everything that's been happening with COVID. So maybe that's my new business venture. I can teach people how to speak British.
I love it. It would be the one accent. Seriously, if I could have an accent, it would be the British accent. So I love it.
It's been an interesting journey, because I've lived in a lot of different countries, and I noticed and had kind of best friends and relationships with people who had very strong international accents, and I noticed that I was picking up everybody's accent. So I had a very mixed accent for a very long time, and then quite a number of years ago now, I started doing singing lessons, and because I was listening to the sound of my own voice most of the time as I'm coaching people, I noticed I could hear it in myself that my accent was just going back to my original Southern accent, and I've never lost it. So yeah, I'm definitely back to my pure Southern accent now.
Well, it's amazing, but it's true. It happens over here too. So my husband is from the north, and so he doesn't have an accent. Right. And believe it or not, our children do not have the Southern accent. I'm the only one that has it. And so I'll notice too, like when we're up north, because we've lived up north some of my accent will start disappearing. But as soon as I get around my family or my very, very Southern friends, it all comes back. So, and my kids like to tease me about it. So
I love that. My husband is the same, because my husband's from Yorkshire, which is kind of the top middle half of the country. And when he talks to his family, his whole accent comes out so strong, especially when he's complaining, because Yorkshiremen are well known for complaining.
Oh, I love it. It's so fun to have these little twerks about ourselves.
I love it. Well, now we probably should better get on to our topic today, which is your photography career and how you've got to where you are. So I know that your story isn't the typical story. So can you tell us a bit about how you got into photography in the first place?
Absolutely. Okay, so first of all, I'm a bit older than most people are in the industry. I actually started my business at 37 years old.
Oh, good
I'll
for you.
actually celebrate my 50th birthday this year.
Now that I couldn't believe. Julie told me that just before we started this interview, and I was like, shut up, you are not nearly 50. You look incredible. And
Well,
amazing.
thank you. My body feels 50.
Oh,
Let's just put it that way. I may not look it, but my body feels it. And weddings, whoa, they're rough on the body. But so this is my second career. It
yes.
wasn't my first career. I actually have a degree in music education
Oh,
and I have a
interesting.
master's degree in special education.
Right.
So when I graduated from college, I went right into teaching music and
Mhm.
I was teaching at a private school. And 2 weeks before school started, our kindergarten teacher became very ill. And they were like, okay, Julie, you're teaching kindergarten. I'm like, what? What?
Wow.
And they were like, hey, you have an education degree. We know it's music, but it's still education. Here's how it goes. Just do it. And I was like,
What?
okay. So it was supposed to just be temporary. Like I was just supposed to fill in for that year. Well, I ended up teaching kindergarten and music for 10 years.
My goodness.
And so I loved it. I love being a teacher. I knew from a very early age that I was going to be a teacher. And yeah, so that's what I did. And so photography for me, I was teaching. I taught for several years, and then once I had my children, I stopped teaching, stayed home with them until they got into school. Once they started school, I went back to teaching at the same school that they were at. So I taught at private school. And so this was back in, geez, when was this? My son was only 2. So it had been 17 years ago.
Wow.
17 years ago, we lived in Naples, Florida,
Oh.
and we were moving. My husband was in the hotel industry.
Mhm.
And so he was getting transferred from Naples. We were heading up to Chicago.
Mm.
And so we were gifted a photo session from one of his photographers because my husband planned the really big events at the Ritz Carlton. And so he said, I want to do something a little different. We're just going to go out to the beach and I just want y'all just play with your kids. Just
Yeah.
run the beach, play with your kids, just let your kids be kids. And for my daughter being autistic, it was really
Mhm.
hard to get her to look at a camera. Like she just,
Yeah.
you couldn't get her attention fast enough. But when we got those images back, like I even before I saw them, when we got in the car, I remember saying to my husband, if I ever do anything else, this is what I want to do. I want to just photograph
Interesting.
people just being natural and real. Okay. Fast forward that uh, to another 8 years. 8 years later, I was teaching and I was given a camera as a
Yeah.
gift. And so I just decided that, hey, I've always been creative. I mean, that's my brain. I'm musical. I was into drama. My second, well, it's basically a minor, but honestly, I was 2 classes away from it being a full major, is
Mm.
drama. And so, like when I was teaching, I would teach kindergarten in the morning until noon. And then from noon until the end of the school day, I taught music and I taught drama. So I was in charge of all the plays and all those kind of fun things. So it's definitely the creative,
Yeah.
really. I'm one of those weird creatives though, because I still have that analytical type mind as well, which I
Yeah.
think is why my business has done so well because I have that. I'm not like full blown creative where everything is just like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's wonderful. Who cares if I'm making money? I've never been that way. And so I was given the camera. I remember taking my kids out to the beach and just like letting them play and letting them be. But I remember immediately I saw light differently.
Wow.
So there were only 2 other photographers. I'm from a very small town. I'm from a little island town north of Florida. It's as far north and east as you can go in Florida. There
Wow.
were only 2 photographers at that time, and they were very traditional photographers because this was back in 2009. So they were very traditional. It was the standard look and smile at the camera. They used flash, all of those things. So here I come in, I've got people running and playing and jumping. And then I have them, light coming through trees and things like that. Nobody had seen anything like that around here.
Yeah.
So my business immediately just took off and I was like, whoa, 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 I'm not even ready for this. Like this is a side thing. This is a hobby, you know, this is nothing. And so this happened in 2009, the summer of 2009, I started shooting for fun. That year I ended up for Christmas sessions, a lot of family sessions. I ended up doing like 50 of them. It was nuts. I was still teaching full time.
Oh my
So
goodness.
then by the time we got into January of 2010, I started having strangers call me and
Yeah.
want sessions. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is a thing. Like, this is something I can do in the summer when I am off from teaching.
Yeah.
And so started our little business. It was only run on Facebook. I didn't even have a website. So 2010, when the school year ended in May, I never went back to teaching. No. So I started out as being a newborn family photographer. I set up a little studio in my home and I said I wasn't going to do weddings. Well, in 2010, I ended up doing 5 weddings for friends and family. Those 5 weddings turned to 41 weddings in 2011.
Wow.
It was nuts. I immediately got thrown into it. I didn't know what to do. I don't advise that at all. I don't advise it. It was way busy. It was so busy to where my husband quit his job
Wow.
because we were like, somebody has to take care of the kids.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was just a crazy, crazy journey that I never expected. I actually started teaching right away too, because
Wow.
I had so many people wondering, like, how did you do it? Well, I don't understand. Like, what's your technique? How do you do this? Why is your posing so natural? How do you use that light? And so, of course, being a teacher, that was just a natural progression for me. So I actually started teaching workshops at the end of 2010. We're talking 1 year in the business. So I didn't claim to know everything, but I was like, I can teach you what I do and what I know. So my business just literally was extremely organic. It took off. I transitioned full time into weddings. I ended up stopping taking family sessions. I would still shoot some, like a mini sessions here and there, to just be for my current clients.
Yeah.
But I stepped out of newborn photography, full blown weddings. Been full blown weddings ever since. Last year, kind of took a big turn on weddings. I had already been, I was already kind of entertaining the idea of stepping out of weddings, mostly just because of my age. It was starting, all of my weddings are destination weddings. My weddings were also getting to where they were multiple day weddings. And that's just a lot. I have some underlying health conditions. And honestly, I really just kind of burned out. I was burnt out. I'd stressed myself out for so many years. It was time. It was time to step away. So we started our transitioning out of weddings in 2019. So last year I was only going to do 5 weddings. Well, we all know what happened. Those 5 weddings have now moved to this year. So this year I'm not booking any new weddings. This is my last year of shooting weddings. I have my 5 and I'm super excited about them. And now I've just more transitioned into, I still shoot, but I shoot more for editorials. I get hired to shoot like for high-end brands, wedding brands, still very much involved in the wedding industry because of me shooting for them. I shoot lookbooks, things like that for them. My passion is couples. I love to shoot couples, whether they're newly engaged, whether they've been married 50 years. And so that's where I'm kind of going towards. I've kind of built this little niche where it's kind of like people love to travel to these beautiful locations. They hire me. We go all out, big, beautiful dress, all the things, flowers, styling, everything. And so that's kind of where I'm progressing towards. I had worked really hard to build where I would even do destination sessions for a lot of my American friends would want to travel to beautiful places. I'd go with them. They'd hire me, take them with them. But of course, international travel is just not happening right now.
Yeah.
So now I'm doing more because everything's kind of moved online. I do a lot of coaching online. So I have different things that I offer. Once a month, I offer master classes where people can sign up for the master class. I teach a 2 to 3 hour live class. We also have group coaching. I have a mastermind that I run. I have online courses. So if people are interested in learning about posing or film or, how to be better in their business, we have online courses for that. So we've really diversified and I'm so happy. Like I love where this has gone, and this is where I see myself for the next 10 years before hopefully I am able to retire. So that's that. That is 12 years in a concise description, I guess you could say.
What an amazing journey you've had. And I love that you're just being aware of yourself, of how your seasons are changing, and you're like, no, I'm changing, my life is changing, and just to allow things to change with it, and to not try and hold on to what was, but to keep looking forward and moving forward into what you sense is your growing passion and your growing focus and what really makes you happy. And I just think that's so good.
Absolutely. I mean, if you would have asked me 2-3 years ago, I would have said, no way, I will be a wedding photographer forever. And it's amazing how it just, and it's not that I still love the whole aspects of the weddings. I love the couples. I love the connections and all of that. But, it just, there comes a time where you just know that your body's had enough.
Yeah.
And I have to listen to that. I still want to be around. Like, hopefully one day I'll have grandchildren. I don't want to be so stressed out or sick because of, me pushing my body toward, to the limits. And so, I've always been busy, I actually loved being busy. I was one of those major overachievers where I felt like I was more organized. I was more on top of things when I was busy.
Yeah.
And so 2020 really taught me how to slow down. I mean, it was forced.
Yeah.
It was forced, but I needed that. I would have never done it on my own.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm actually, I know that it was hard. I'm not going to lie. Everything was hard about it. But I'm actually very grateful for what happened and what we've gone through in 2020, because I think that's the only way that I would have gone into this new purpose, because I would have still kept hustling. And I'm not about the hustle anymore. And that's what I teach, is that I teach people can have different you can all be successful in your own way.
Absolutely.
Just because somebody else is doing this doesn't mean, and you're not, doesn't mean you're not successful.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I really want to push forward, is letting people know, hey, if you decide that you only want to do 5 weddings a year and you want them all to be local so that you can be there for your family, you're successful.
Absolutely.
You don't have to make multiple 6 figures to be successful. Who started that? Who put there, if you're not a multiple 6-figure wedding photographer, you're not successful. That is not true at all.
So true.
I mean, if you only need to make $20,000 a year and you reach that goal, you're successful.
Yeah.
Yay.
Absolutely.
Let's cheer you on.
I couldn't agree more.
Feel less than.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you're doing what you love, getting paid for it, and living the life that you want to live, then, like you said, that's success. And I've always been an anti-hustle person. I've always just work to live, isn't it? That what they say? Work to live rather than live to work. I've always been, I just prefer a lot of my own time and a very leisurely work schedule. And so I've never been like a photographer that everyone talks about because I'm doing all this stuff, but I've had a very comfortable life and I've been very happy living it, and my business has enabled that. And so, I've been incredibly happy with it. So that is such good advice, because I think sometimes, you can look at other photographers and exactly like you said, think that is kind of making it. But making it is when you're happy, when you've got the income that you need to support the lifestyle that you want and the family that you have. That's it. You've made it. So and that doesn't mean you charge whatever you're comfortable charging. If you don't charge a lot, not enough, well, then you're still charging enough.
Yes. It's so true because it's like, I bought into that. I'm not gonna lie. It's like I everything went so fast for me and I
Yeah,
kind of just got thrown into the spotlight
yeah.
immediately and I didn't know how to handle it, know what to do. And so I basically was like, okay, so this is what I need to do to be successful. I need to shoot 40 weddings a year. I need to be
Mm,
speaking at all these conferences. I need to be published in all these places. And, I reached that.
yeah,
I did. I
yeah.
reached that. I made more money than ever even
Than you ever
considered
dreamt.
making in
Yeah.
my lifetime. And I mean, I grew up simple and
Wow.
the majority of our marriage was that way.
Wow.
And just to be but I will tell you, I did all those things. Like
Yeah.
I checked off every single thing that people would look at a successful
Yes.
photographer. And when I got there, I was like, okay, I don't feel anything. Like,
Wow.
I feel stressed.
Yeah.
I feel yeah, it wasn't good.
That is so helpful for
Mhm.
people coming after you to hear that story. I actually heard a quote from Jim Carrey a while ago, and he said, I wish everybody could be rich and famous so that they realize that's not the answer.
No.
Because he had everything, he'd achieved on this level that most people just think, oh, like that's the pinnacle of human success. And he was miserable and he got depressed. And
Yeah.
like he's explored a lot of his own spirituality and contentment, and his life has totally changed. It's so helpful, like you said, to have climbed to the top of the ladder and to let everybody know there's nothing up here. It's just a ladder.
No,
That's all it is.
no. And, like, where do you go from there? Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, once you reach the top, what happens? Where do you go
yeah,
from there?
yeah.
It basically it just puts you like for me, everybody
Mm,
talks about like getting those, being hired to shoot weddings that are
mm.
15, you get hired for 15 grand, 20 grand. So my most expensive wedding was 27,000 is what I
Wow,
got paid. It was a
wow.
multiple day wedding,
Yeah.
so there was a lot. And of course that was travel and things like that.
Mm,
But I always thought that, oh my gosh, like
yeah,
that is freaking amazing.
yeah.
And no, it took me a whole week to recover from that wedding.
Wow. Yeah.
I was so exhausted, I was sick, I
Wow.
it was just like, "Whoa," and I just realized that I just didn't want that.
Mm,
I didn't want that, and, several of the weddings that I was starting to get hired for that were over, once I started at, like, 15K and above,
mm.
I felt like a vendor. I didn't feel like
Interesting.
I didn't have the connections. I wasn't
Mm,
allowed to connect with the couple because the planner did
mm.
everything. And that just wasn't for me. And some people,
Yeah,
they thrive on that, and I say, kudos, go for it. That's
yeah,
great. But for me as a person, I'm all about connection. And that
yeah,
is what I built my business on from the very, very beginning.
yeah.
I started out shooting friends and people that I knew, and then it just went from word of mouth. I mean, I didn't have a website for 2 years because I didn't need a
Didn't need
website,
one. Wow.
and, that's how my business has been.
Yeah.
Even the 5 weddings that I have this year, none of them came and they're all big weddings,
Mm.
travel weddings, luxury weddings, but none of them came from planners. They
Wow.
all came from I have one that was sister of a past bride.
Yeah.
I have another one that was referred by his sister, who's a photographer, for me to shoot their proposal at Versailles in Paris or outside of Paris. And so they loved me when I shot the proposal, so they hired me. The other one is a former employee of ours who worked with me when I first got started in the business. And
Wow.
now she's getting married. Of course, she hired me.
Wow.
Then we have, trying to think like off the bat here, who are the others? The other one is a fellow photographer. And then the last one is a planner who I had worked
Wow.
with in the past, loved my work, is hiring me for her wedding. So that just goes to show it's like, those are my
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Those are my people. They're not the people that were like, oh, she's been in People magazine. Oh, she shot
Mhm.
celebrities. I want her to shoot my wedding.
That's so
They
interesting.
don't want to
Actually,
connect with me.
they would have hired you even if you hadn't have had all of those, accolades or, exposures.
Absolutely.
I love that.
They
And
like, mhm,
it's so interesting for me, I think, I like I said, I've always been quite passionate about work-life balance and just not getting involved in the hustle and the rat race. I'm just not interested. But even I can feel those little twinges of, oh, should I, well, it's always come down to worrying what other people are thinking. That's always what the baseline of those fears are. And I think, oh, should I be charging more? But I'm very realistic. I understand our industry. I am at the very top end of DIY brides in the UK. Most of my brides are really having to scrimp in their budget to get me. If I go any higher, I am very aware that I'm going to need to start working with planners. And exactly like you said, I just know that's not my market. I don't like it. I like having personal contact with the couple. I like weddings that are a bit more DIY and just less formal and less traditional. And so, sometimes I think, oh, I don't know, you're always worrying like, oh, to be respected, should I be charging more? But I just think I'm in my good market. I'm very happy. I know my clients love me and have really reached to get me. And I know that I don't want to transition into the next section of the market. So I stay where I'm happy.
And it's okay. But see, that's what we need to normalize. And
absolutely,
that's kind of me. It's like, I feel like that's my purpose going forward. To be honest with you, I feel very strongly about this I feel like there's so much comparison online. We see the people that we're following and it looks like they're doing all the great things, but I'm going to tell you some secrets. Okay. I'm very connected with the industry, owning a conference, having the big names that come in and speak in our conferences, being friends with them as well. I know that it's not as glamorous as it looks on the outside. I know personally that they are going through internal struggles, anxiety, stress, that comes with all of those things.
Oh, yeah.
The pressure that is on you to shoot a wedding where they are paying you $10,000 to $20,000, that pressure is just unreal because they feel like at that price range, they have to have perfection. And we all know that that's impossible.
Yes.
Things happen. What if it rains on the wedding day?
Oh, gosh.
And everybody always has someone to blame. And guess who gets blamed?
Wow.
The photographer gets blamed.
Yeah. I had a colleague a client complained to her that there was no sun flare in her pictures. She was like, it was a cloudy day.
I have totally
I'm not
had
a magician.
I have legit had that. I have legit had people be upset because they were comparing. They were like, my wedding should have looked like this. This wedding was in the south of France.
Oh.
This wedding. Okay. They're trying to compare their city wedding to the south of France. And I'm like, honey, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It will never look like that, but it is, and I think that's one of the things I'll tell you, you're talking about how you love, like your top level DIY brides. And when I look back over all of my years, those are definitely some of my favorite brides.
Yeah.
I had to keep raising my price because of demand, to be honest with you. I just couldn't keep it up. And I kept raising my prices thinking people would stop booking me, and they didn't, unfortunately. So now I'm just like, okay, forget it. I'm out of weddings. Y'all can stop booking me now. But, and it does, and you can't, a lot of people are like, well, then just go back. And I'm like, you can't really, you just can't really go back. Once you have established yourself up here, you can't really go back. So it's either just stop, stay there, suck it up, endure it, which I am not one to. I always said that if I was only doing it for the money, then I would quit.
Wow. That's really good.
So, I mean, I could stay in weddings. I could stay in weddings for probably another 5 years or so, probably 10 years, Nobody knows how old I am. They freak out when they find out that you're my mom's age. That's what my couples will say.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, okay, you really do not need to say that. But yes, I am.
Hilarious.
But it just, I just knew that, and it's not that, a lot of people, and at first too, like you were saying earlier, you're always concerned with what people think and what people are saying. And I really struggled with it because I felt like that people were thinking that, oh, she can't book anymore.
Wow.
It immediately went to that. And I'm like, okay, first of all, who cares if they think that? If they
So
think that,
good.
I don't want them in my corner. And so
Absolutely.
we have to get away from those
Yeah.
things. A lot of times there's things in the industry, like if someone decides to step away from weddings or something like that, or go into teaching, they'll say, well, it's because they can't do weddings anymore. No, I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
If I open back up weddings today, I would be filled. It's not that problem. It is, to me, it is quality of life.
Yes.
Quality of life, my happiness,
Yeah.
spending more time. My biggest regret is that through all those busy hustle times is that, the time with my kids. My kids are grown now. They're
Wow.
grown. Our
Wow.
daughter's 22. Although, she's with us because she's high functioning autistic. But our son's, he's 19, is in his sophomore year in college. And if I could go back and have
Wow.
more time with them, I would much rather have that than the money and the fame.
Wow.
And it's just,
This is a very deep
priorities.
question that you might not be able to answer off the top of your head, but looking
Mhm.
back then over your career, and like, as we discussed, in a lot of ways you've climbed to the top of the ladder that most people are trying to climb, and you're shouting back down the ladder, there's nothing up here, it's just a ladder with the next rung. So looking back over your career, are there decisions that you would have made differently in order to preserve that quality of life that actually in some ways you feel like you missed in some aspects? And what would they have been?
So I wish that I would have been told that it's okay to just stop somewhere,
Wow.
that you don't have to just keep going.
Love that.
Yeah. I felt like and that is the problem. That is the
Mhm.
problem. Like once you start that, it's just always, okay, I got to outdo myself the next year.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow, I was in Style Me Pretty. All right, now I need to be in Brides. Oh, I was in Brides. Okay, now I need to be in People magazine.
Yeah.
Oh, I shot this celebrity. Now I need to book 3 more celebrities.
Yes.
And that constant drive of just being better and better and outdoing myself. Like that's what I regret the most is this feeling that way, because you do get caught up in that. You get caught up in, and it's your worth too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's been my biggest thing about walking away from wedding photographer, being a wedding photographer. I'm a good wedding photographer. I love my clients. I put 150% into it. I am very efficient on a wedding day. I can get in, get it done. I am a very good wedding photographer. Okay. But just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you need to keep doing it.
Wow. Really good.
And I wish that I would have been told that earlier. I wish that I would have been given the freedom to say, you know what? I love my $7,000 brides. I'm sticking here. This is where I'm staying.
Love it.
But I felt so much pressure from the industry that I just had to keep going and going. And you have to hit this. And in order to be, accepted as a luxury photographer, you have to be shooting 10K plus weddings. You have to be traveling all over for these weddings. You need celebrities. Like that was the thing that was in my head. And then it kind of gets you on a high. It really does.
Yeah.
Where you start feeling like you need that to validate yourself.
Interesting.
Because I'm a number 2 on the Enneagram. Don't know if you talk about the Enneagram much, but I love the Enneagram. So I'm a number 2. And so I need that. The validation from people is like a really big thing for me. It makes me feel valuable. So my biggest struggle when I was trying to make the decision to step away from wedding photography was that I lost myself.
Wow.
Because that was my identity. My
Yeah.
identity was being a wedding photographer, a leader in the industry, being published on all of these things. And I've really had to last year, and it's still a struggle. It's still a daily struggle to know that just being Julie is enough.
Oh, I love that. So good.
I don't need those titles. I don't need
Yeah.
those accolades.
Yeah.
I can just be me. There's
Yeah.
so much that I have to offer to the world by just being me
Yeah.
and not having that success crown.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. And it's so important because I think that's the secret to life, not just
It
business,
really is.
just learning to love yourself
Mhm.
without needing to do anything, just because you are. You know, you exist, and that's enough for you to be of amazing value, and to
Yeah.
enjoy the small things in life. You know, and like you said, you know, I've also really enjoyed the forced slowdown of
Oh,
2020,
yes.
because
Mhm.
you know, I'm already that way inclined anyway. So because my husband keeps his eye on this kind of stuff, he loves researching, so he saw it coming, and he said, SJ, there's looking like we're going to be asked to stay in our homes for 3 months. And I said, oh, that sounds lovely. And I
Yep.
thoroughly enjoyed myself. And you know, as at the time that we're recording this podcast, we are currently in our third lockdown in the UK, so we still can't leave our house, and it's due to go on for another 7 weeks. But everyone's saying, yeah, it's going to be longer than that. And so
Yeah.
I'm back here again in my house, and I'm still having the time of my life. And you know, I travel a lot with my business too, and I have a lot of people who said to me, oh, you must be really struggling, like not traveling. I'm like,
Mhm.
you know, I like traveling, but I'm just as happy in my house. And having had a whole year in my house, it's helped confirm to me, exactly like you said, that I love traveling, but it's not my identity. I am just as
Cool.
happy sitting in my house doing a little bit of cross stitch, doing a jigsaw puzzle, just like silly old lady things, because I'm also older than I look as well, and I'm just embracing the fact that I like old lady crafts like cross stitch and
Hey, I
jigsaw
love
puzzle.
it. You're gonna laugh, but guess what? I just ordered off of Amazon.
What did you get?
Cross stitch stuff.
Let me see if I've got it. If I got it right here. Oh, I've just started a new one. There's the one that I've just started, and
I love it.
well, it's because we found these. They were. I don't think we've got any. I don't think I've got any here to hand. But there was in our local craft shop. They had a little Christmas robin for £1, and so I bought one. I said to my husband, do you want one too? And he's like, oh yes, okay. So we sat there during Christmas doing these little Christmas robins, and we absolutely loved it. So I've gone on. I mean, I've spent all my Christmas money on embroidery stuff now, and my husband bought a £30 cross stitch kit to do all the Lego characters of Star Wars. So they're all standing
I
next to each
love
other.
it. I love it. I know. I saw this little thing. One of my best friends, Paris is like really special to us because it was just like we had known each other in the industry. She's also a photographer. And I had a last minute trip come up where I needed to go to Paris to do a shoot. And I was like, I don't want to go by myself. My husband couldn't go with me. And so I was just like, I just need to find somebody who would be like crazy enough to just like, yeah, I'll buy a ticket and leave in a week.
Love it.
And so I had asked her, and like I said, we didn't really even know each other that well. And we just really connected on a deep level on that trip together. And she is just like one of my like best friends, just kind of one of those friendships that feel like, they're just your person,
Yeah.
And so Paris has always been, and we've been on a couple more trips together to Paris, and it's just a special spot. So I saw somebody had made somebody and sent it to them for Christmas, and it was like two little girls and then a little Eiffel Tower. And I'm like, I can make that. So I went on Amazon and I ordered all the stuff because I used to cross stitch when I was little, when I was young.
Yeah.
I actually used to do it. We would have like these little competitions in school all the time, and I would cross stitch. So I bought it and I'm like, I'm going to do it. Right now, I'm like way too busy because my new website launches next week. And so I can't think about cross stitch, but I'm like, I can cross stitch this. I'm going to make this for my friends. But yeah, watercolor. That's another thing too, is like, I really want to explore is watercolor, just we need other ways to be creative. If we can't go out and shoot all the time right now, like there's other things that we can do. And I'm just happy with that. Like, I never thought that I would even be happy in an RV.
I really want to hear more about this RV life. I mentioned earlier that I have totally got into tiny house videos on YouTube. I'm absolutely obsessed with them because for me, it feels like the perfect antidote of the bigger, better, more Western culture where everything's got to be, bigger, better, more. That's success.
Absolutely.
And I love the tiny house movement because it says the exact opposite. No, minimize your expenses and live the life that you love. And so there's lots of people living in tiny houses. And I remember one lady, she said, now I can paint because I love to paint, not because I need to make money off it. And I just thought, I love that. There's just rediscovering what life is actually about, disconnected from commerce and money, but actually just because it makes your soul feel alive. So tell me more about what it's been like to live in an RV. I'm so
totally. Well, I think it's the whole same thing like you were saying. It's and that was, I kind of felt like how when my business started growing and I started, becoming more popular, making more money, you just like, okay, bigger house, you got to show it, bigger house, nicer car, you got to do all those things. And so you do get caught up in that for sure. So when our son, I think my husband and I went through a midlife crisis here, because when our son left for college, we had a house. It was a very good sized house. It actually had a separate house, and that's where my studio was. That's where I would host workshops. And we loved it. 3 acres of land, big porch, could watch the sunset. It was amazing. But it was an older house, so it was time to just like completely redo it.
Yeah.
And when we started thinking about like, is this home set up? Like, because if we're going to put all this money into redoing it, then it has to be a forever home. Like, this is the home that we retire in. And it didn't feel like it. It just didn't feel like we'd lived there for 7 years, but it was just time, And so the house, we actually sold the house.
Wow.
And it was literally the week before my son left for college. So here's all these like big things. Like, we're moving out of our house we've lived in for 7 years. Our son's going away to college. And so we just decided, like, we didn't know what we wanted to do. We were like, okay, do we buy a home that's just kind of like an investment home and we live in it while Noah's in college? And then once he's out of college, we decide like, okay, where is he going to end up? That's where we'll build our forever home. Because my purpose is to be near my grandchildren when it happens. So I know that's a long time in a way, but that's what I want to do. When I retire, I want to be near, hopefully my son gets married and has children, and I want to be around that. And so we decided to just move into a townhome. For a year while we were just kind of figuring out what we were going to do. So we were hoping to start entertaining the idea of building a house last March. Well, we all know what happened in March. So then it was like, okay, absolutely not even thinking about that. Like, we're not investing, we're not letting go money. Like, nobody could let go money because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And so our townhouse was supposed to renew. Our rent would have renewed in October, and we just didn't want to stay there. And so back in July, I had my one wedding last year, and I had to travel for it. And my husband went with me, and he had always joked and always said, like, how fun would it be to just go on the road for a year? And of course I was like, yeah, well, that would be impossible with my schedule, because I literally flew out every single week.
Wow.
Like, that was just a norm for me. I was flying to do this session or this wedding or speak at this conference. And so, there was hardly a week that I didn't fly. And so it would have been impossible to do anything like that.
Yeah.
And so we started looking at it and looking at my schedule for this year. And it was still very uncertain. And, I only had 5 weddings. They're very spread out in different places. And so I said, why don't we just buy an RV? Let's just do it. Let's not renew our lease. Let's put our stuff in storage and let's just do it.
Wow. And
so we started talking, and actually on that trip, we stopped and looked at a few RVs. We came home and told our children. They were basically like, y'all are, this is crazy. And we're like, our son was like the biggest opposition about it. And I'm like, dude, you don't even live with us. Like, you're not even there.
That's so funny.
And so anyway, we just decided to just move forward. Yep. So we just decided to do it. So we bought the RV. We had to go in and buy this big truck, to pull the RV.
Wow.
We don't have a plan, to be honest with you. I had a lot of work. October picked back up for us here, because I think things were starting, our numbers were going down. And so people were like getting anxious and they started getting out, which now our numbers are back up again.
Yeah.
But at the time, things were opening up. So we were like, okay, it's fine. We can like travel to different places. And so October, November, December, I was busy with, I had things planned in Nashville, Florida, and Georgia. So we just kind of traveled around to there. My parents live in Florida. So right now we're in Florida. We came here for the holidays and we're just kind of staying just to kind of wait for things to kind of settle down, the new president to get in, see if there's going to be lockdowns, you know, all those kind of things. But yeah, our plan is to just to be free.
Wow. I love it.
Just to go anywhere.
Yeah.
There's really, you know, it's not like we've sat down and planned out a schedule because we can't. I mean, in this year, you know, we just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Right. So yeah, we've never done this. I'm a planner. Like I typically have 2 years in advance planned out for me. So it has really taught me a lot to just be in the moment.
Wow. And it's
be
so
in the
healthy.
Moment.
It's so healthy to be in the moment.
It is. And you know, I feel so much better. And I've had people even comment, they're just like, you just look different.
Wow.
Like you look different. You look younger, you look happier. And I started looking back at pictures, like 2017 was my year of my breakdown, I guess you could kind of say. It was the best year of our business ever. Like all the things that people dream about happening to their business happened for me in 2017. But I was looking at some pictures at the end of 2017 of me, and I looked old. I looked stressed. You could just see in my countenance how unhappy I was. And then now to look at me, where here I am, my business is not doing what we made in 2017 at all. We're living in an RV with no cares in the world, basically. And the difference in my countenance and my life is just like, it's so different. So yeah, so we're just embracing it. We don't know what's going to happen. Our plans are to hopefully get off the road again and get back settled in Nashville, whether we build or buy a house in probably September, October.
Yeah.
Because we definitely want to be back before Christmas, you know, so we want to be back in another home before Christmas of next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, right now we're hoping to start, maybe we said in end of January, February, we'd start heading out west, but now the situation's not very good. So we'll probably hang around Florida for January and February, and then maybe start heading out west then. So, you know, Texas, Arizona, California eventually. Hang out in California. I have a wedding there in June. And then we're going to come back to the East Coast, and I have weddings up north East Coast. So I have weddings on Long Island and Martha's Vineyard. And so we're going to hang out up there. Our son will be out of school for, you know, summer. So we're going to just hang out all up in the New England area and explore with him, and then head back to Nashville and settle down again.
I love it. And like you said, that feeling of freedom, that you can just go where the mood takes you. And that's the thing I've noticed watching the tiny house videos, is that so many of them say, I feel so free and I feel so happy. And I thought, you ask an average person in a suburban city, do you feel free and happy? And like they'll be like, I wouldn't say that. Do you know? And I just thought, there's something in this. There's something in this simple lifestyle that is suited to the human spirit. And I just think, like you said, it's so telling that the ultimate year in your business was the year that you actually felt the worst in yourself. So exactly like you said, on the surface level, people looking in might think, oh, she's making it, you know, she's achieving it. And actually it was slowly wearing you down. It was breaking you, you know, as a person.
It really was. Wow. It really was. It was killing me. It was literally killing me.
Wow.
And I just didn't even know it, you know, because I would even I just remember I'd feel guilty for feeling bad about myself because I've achieved all my goals that I was going for.
Yes.
Like, why are you feeling bad for yourself? Are you crazy? Wow. There's so many people that want to be in your shoes.
Wow.
You know, and just the pressure too. I think people don't realize the pressure of I never intended to be a well-known photographer.
No.
That was never. I know some people set out for that. Like I do. I know girls that I coach that there's I'm going to be on the top. Wow. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you, I've been there and it's not that great, but if you want to go, go for it, whatever. but that was never my intention.
No.
I always thought that I would be the small town wedding photographer in my little tiny town, shooting in the summers when I was not teaching.
Yeah.
Like, that was my aspirations and goals. And all of this just got thrown into my lap. It was not expected. It was nothing that, I mean, yeah, I worked hard. I'm not going to say that. Like, I worked hard and hustled to get to things. They just weren't given to me.
Yes.
But a lot of it just like the way the business grew and the way everything went, it just like, I wasn't expecting any of that. But, there were some years where I got caught up in it.
Yeah.
You do. And now I look back on it and I'm just like, I can't believe that I allowed myself to be there.
Oh, it's so easy to get caught up in it. It's so easy. And like you said, you felt like you were losing yourself, and now you're rediscovering who you are, and it's so good.
Yeah. I love helping people. That is my core being.
Yeah.
And you can't help people when you can't help yourself.
Oh, so true.
And that's where I was, for so many years. I couldn't even help myself.
Yeah.
How could I help other people? Now I was trying to, but it was just like, I was taking everything. I was giving everything to everybody else. There was nothing left for me.
Yeah.
And you just get to a point to where it's like a bomb, it's going to go off.
Wow.
And it did for me. It did for me. And my wake up call, was the end of 2017. And I was just like, I can't do that now, unfortunately, because like I said, everything's scheduled out for a year or so. Like 2018 was still a very, very hard year. 2019 was still a very hard year for me because I had already like set up all of these things. And that's why I feel like 2020 had to happen for me, because that was the only way that I just wouldn't keep up that schedule. It just had to like be taken from me.
I sensed it. Yeah, I sensed it in myself when all of this kicked off in the beginning of 2020, and it's difficult to say it because I'm not saying it glibly, because I know that there's been significant loss for a lot of people, especially people who've lost loved ones, whatever. But there was this sense within me. It felt like a divine timeout. God was like, go to your room. This isn't working for you, because everybody was so miserable. Life is just going too fast and too complicated, and nobody's happy. And it just felt like a divine timeout. Like just stop for a bit, just stop. And like so many people started reassessing their lives, going, oh, I don't think that's a life I want, and starting to reform the life that they were going to have afterwards. And so I think so much good is going to come out of it, in amongst all of this, the suffering and loss. It just feels like actually there's some real beauty that's going to come out of it. And I'm so happy to hear that you're finding yours with your RV and I
know, it's the craziest thing ever. It's not about, and I run a mastermind, and we had our very first call, and that was one of the things that we were talking about. A lot of the girls were all they're coming into this mastermind, they're burnout, they're tired, they need something new in their life, they've got to figure this out. And I think we need to learn to live with what we need.
Yes.
And sometimes, like I've kind of viewed 2020 and even 2021, I'm not viewing these years as big money makers. Yeah. I'm just not. Yeah. I'm viewing them as like, okay, I need to bring in enough money to keep my team, to provide for my family. Yeah. That's what I need. I don't need, all this extra stuff. I don't need to push myself beyond the limits to have more money in my bank account. Yeah. Because that will put me right back where I was before. Yeah. Now, if extra blessings come, that's great. If we do happen, something really incredible happens, that's all great. But I don't want to put myself in a hustle to like set it where I have to make that happen. Yeah. Absolutely. And, this is another thing that I always said too, that one thing that I loved about 2020. And of course, I'm with you on this. Like 2020 is a huge loss. I mean, I personally have lost family members, friends, and just seeing my industry that I love and that I've poured so much into for 12 years, seeing it suffer and seeing other photographers close their doors. Like, I've really struggled with that.
Yeah.
But what I loved is that it put all of us on the same level.
Yeah.
Like the highest of highest, Jose Villa, we put him up there. He was struggling just like this 1 year into the business. Now, fortunately for those of us that have gone up, we have money to survive on because we've been smart with our money.
Yeah.
But we still aren't, we're not doing weddings.
Yeah.
All the weddings were taken from everybody. It didn't matter who you were.
Yeah.
And I think that it really helped the industry as a whole to like see that we're all here.
Yeah.
Like, I know we have different levels of suffering, because like some of us, like for me, I have a team. I have to bring in a good amount of money every month to cover my team.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, that's just a one person show, they don't have those expenses. So I know, like, for someone, as long as they make $1,000 a month, they're great. For me, I need to make $10,000 a month to cover my expenses because I have a bigger business and I have a team. So, it's all relative when you think about that. But at the same time, though, we all are right there together.
Yeah.
And I was hoping and praying, and I do feel like it has happened to a certain extent, but I still think we need another year.
Yeah.
But I was hoping that we could come together, and stop that hierarchy.
Yes.
I don't like the hierarchy that we have in the wedding industry.
Yeah. I love that.
Because we're all just doing what we want to do. We love it and we want to provide for our families.
Yeah.
So stop saying that you're more valuable than somebody else.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's all like this ladder, and actually the ladder doesn't exist. It's all an illusion. We're all just...
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's been so refreshing to talk to you, because I think, often the conversations can naturally, go towards the bigger, better, more, how to get more clients, how to get better clients, how to, increase your income. And I really, really like what we've talked about, because this is totally my philosophy, that actually it's about authenticity, being your truest self and living the life that really makes you happy, regardless of what anybody else thinks or may judge. And that has been so refreshing. So talking about your love of helping people, where can people go to find out more about these masterclasses that you're running and the online courses that you have?
Well, right now, everything's a little messed up because the new website is launching. So, which hopefully by the time this podcast happens, the new website will be up, because it actually will be up on January 15th. So
brilliant.
We should be good.
Yeah, this podcast is going out on the 8th of March. So that'll be perfect.
Wonderful.
The website will be out.
Yeah. So just juliepaisley.com.
Brilliant.
Everything will be there. You'll know about all the things that happen in Julie Paisley land. And I'm also starting a podcast.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes, I'm super excited. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be, I kind of say that my premise behind it is, growing up, I was obsessed with the Dear Abby, where people would write in and ask questions. And so that's kind of how my podcast is going to be geared. It's going to be a solo show. And so it's just taking questions, and it's about everything. It can be business, it can be life, it can be anything. What is it like traveling, on the road? What are the lessons that you learned? What did you do in your former life? And so it's just going to be a fun, lighthearted 20 to 30 minute podcast. And I'm super excited to get that going so that people can just like connect with me, because that's where moving forward for me is all about connection.
Yes.
And so I want to put myself out there. I do it on my Instagram, of course, but I think this will just give me a new level of connecting with other people, which just, it feeds my soul, makes me so happy.
I love that. So much to get involved with, and you've got such a generous heart to help people. Well, Julie, thank you so much for sharing your story, your incredible story, and wish you all the best with this new chapter and new focus for your business. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a joy to talk to you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more interviews, tips and inspiration in the Love Light Fine Art community on Facebook. You can also follow along with each new episode on the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram. And don't forget to visit www.sarahjaneethan.co.uk/lovelight for information on training, real-life wedding workshops and online courses to develop your own fine art photography and connect with more of the clients you love.